Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another double take. Today's double take is about Robert Altman. So it's 1971's Mccabe and Mrs. Miller, starring Warren Beatty and Julie Christie, and 1973's The Long Goodbye, starring Elliot Gould and Sterling Hayden, amongst others. Now, I've got a bit of a confession about Robert Altman. I'm not the biggest fan of Altman. I haven't seen all of his films, so I can't make a complete judgment on his career. But he's a filmmaker I should probably love more than I do. I like all the Robert Altman films that I've seen, but I don't necessarily love any of them. And these two come closest. These for me are both 4 out of 5 star films. But if I ever get time to actually watch them more often, they're the Altman films that for me could end up being 5-star films. Obviously it's just personal taste. The thing is, I have a lot of respect for the man, a lot of respect for how he went about his business, how actors loved him, how he pretty much just did what he wanted to do. But for some reason I don't love his films, and I'm not really sure why that is. Again, I haven't seen all of his films, so I can't make a complete career judgment. I don't know whether it's because his films, even these two, which are my favourite Altman films, he's perhaps not as focused as other filmmakers. He tends to paint outside the lines, which for me can be a little bit frustrating, but then there's other filmmakers that I don't mind that as much. So I'm not exactly sure why I just don't adore Robert Altman films, like so many people do. But again, it's maybe just personal taste. But these two, like I said, are my favourite Altman films, and over time those 4s may turn into 5s. I don't know, I think these might be my favourite Altmans because they take a genre that I'm familiar with and we're all familiar with, the Western and the private eye film, and subvert them or make them turn out to be not what you think they'll be. They both have endings that perhaps you don't expect. His films, certainly these two films, because they are set up in conventional genres, he does have the ability to surprise, and the stories go in different directions than what you think they will, which is obviously a good thing. So we'll start with Mccabe and Mrs. Miller, starring Warren Beatty and Julie Christie, but there's lots of other wonderful people in it. Keith Carradine, very young Keith Carradine, Rene Aberdour, who I can never pronounce his name, obviously. Obviously the music in this is fantastic because it's by Leonard Cohen, one of my favourite artists of all time. It has a very old photograph feel, which was deliberate. It's very dirty and dark and dank, which is probably one of the more authentic feels of the Pacific Northwest in that period of time. I do think all of these films that I've seen are probably a touch too long, and they are a little bit like a meandering river rather than a juggernauting waterfall, which at times is not a bad thing. It gives you more time to enjoy the atmosphere and the ambience of the films. Again, in these two films' case, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing, because you can almost smell the terrible food in the whorehouse tents in this film. You can almost smell it because the atmosphere is so strong. I mean, it's a simple story about a gambler played by Warren Beatty who turns up in this frontier, still evolving, still building town, and during the shooting they pretty much just built it as the story required. He has an idea to lay a foundation, and obviously America's pretty much built on gambling, whorehouses and guns, and obviously raping the natural world, so mining. Gets Julie Christie as a madam, and she turns the tents for the prostitutes into an actual bathhouse and a house, because she has dreams of big business and moving to San Francisco or a proper city. This is just a stepping stone. Warren Beatty perhaps isn't as smart as he thinks he is. He can't really see the big picture the way Julie Christie can. Their kind of frothy relationship is a lot of fun. But then two people, one of which is Michael Murphy, turns up to buy him out, to buy the town, which Warren Beatty refuses because he wants more and more money for it. And then they eventually give up and send three goons, who are very colourful characters themselves, to pretty much end Mccabe. It is a film about the building of America, essentially. The town is a metaphor for America itself. Obviously murder and corruption and land grabbing is a big theme. Again, it's got a wonderful ending, very much like The Great Silence. It ends in the snow, which again for a western is quite unusual. Again, there's a real sense of time and place about the film. At the beginning it's quite murky and dark, but again they wanted to go for that kind of old photograph kind of look. This premium collection edition, again like all premium collection editions, it's kind of hit and miss as far as the special features, but this one's pretty good. It's got behind the scenes documentary, theatrical trailer, and it's got a feature length commentary with Robert Altman and producer David Foster. But bizarrely that's on the DVD only. This is a Blu-ray DVD combo. It's by number 58 for those counting at home. So this is one of the better premium collection releases. Warren Beatty, who again is perhaps not my favourite actor in the world, but obviously I love him in Parallax View, which is one of my favourite films of all time. And he's very good in this, as is Julie Christie. So then we get to The Long Goodbye from 1973, which again, it's a private detective film, but because it's Altman, it's a little bit different, which confused a lot of people when it came out in 1973. It's about Philip Marlowe, played by Elliot Gould, one of Elliot Gould's finest performances, because he is just unbelievably cool in this film. They kind of talk about, this is Philip Marlowe from like the 40s, but he's just been sleeping for all these years, so he wakes up in the 70s. He's not really a part of the time. He's kind of a stranger in a strange land. This kind of naked female hippies that do yoga who live opposite him in his apartment building. He's not really part of the culture. He is kind of an outsider, just lives with his cat. Again, this is Arrow Academy. It's a beautiful print, and the extras on this are really good. It's an isolated music and effects soundtrack. It has an interview with Robert Altman and Elliot Gould where they actually talk about Rip Van Marlowe. Essentially, it is Philip Marlowe, but he's just waking up in the 70s. Visma Sigmund flashes A Long Goodbye, an interview with the legendary cinematographer. It is a beautiful looking film. Giggle and Give In, the acclaimed documentary profile of Robert Altman, with contributions from Altman, Gould, Shelley Duvall, assistant director Alan Rudolph, screenwriter Joan Tewksbury. There's an Elliot Gould Q&A where he talks about the film. There's a video essay with David Thompson and Robert Altman, Tom Williams and Raymond Chandler, Maxim Jabadowski on hard-boiled fiction, trailer, radio spots, and reversible sleeve. I don't actually have the first print, first run booklet, so it's just a reversible sleeve, but the extras are really good. Again, this one is perhaps a meandering river, but because of Elliot Gould, you don't actually mind that as much. And I think that's maybe where I like Altman rather than love him, is because some of his films that do meander, the characters, for me, perhaps aren't as engaging as Mccabe and Mrs. Miller or Philip Marlowe. And maybe that's why I just like his films rather than love his films, and why I really like these two the most. Again, it's got an ending that is a little surprising, an ending that when Robert Altman decided to do the film, he definitely did not want them to change the ending. Again, musically, it has the song The Long Goodbye, but it's played in different forms. There is some other music, but that song, it's male vocals, female vocals. Only in the extras did I really notice they use it in a doorbell ring. So both films have interesting music. Mccabe and Mrs. Miller has the songs of Leonard Cohen, which are awesome. And The Long Goodbye, they just have this running motif of that song. It's just such a cool private detective story. Sterling Hayden turns up as this jaded, troubled writer, and he kind of got the part after an actor that Robert Altman was actually going to cast died during the filming. And of course Sterling Hayden at that time was kind of forgotten and an alcoholic, so he's not really acting that much. He did have a tick of repeating himself, and he just does that during the film as well. It's a great performance by Elliot Gould's cat at the start of the film. But it's just one of the iconic performances by Elliot Gould. He wears a kind of a suit and tie for the whole film, even when he's in the Malibu beach. Again, both these films have great music, great performances, great looks, great atmosphere. The way The Long Goodbye is shot, the camera's always kind of moving slightly in scenes. There's kind of unusual setups. Again, it's as if Altman's not telling you what you should be looking at or telling you how to think. He's kind of letting the audience kind of make up their own mind just by slowly moving the camera about in scenes, which is kind of effective. Yeah, the more I talk about The Long Goodbye, it might actually be rated higher. But for the purposes of this video, they're both 4-star films for me, which may change in the future. But it was just really an excuse to confess my sins regarding Robert Altman. I know I'll probably get abusive comments, but for me, like I say, I respect the hell out of his work, his body of work, and his career, and how he went about his business. But I like his films, don't love his films, but for me these two are the closest to the two films of his that I do actually love. So leave comments below. Don't judge me too harshly for not worshipping Robert Altman. Let me know what you think of The Long Goodbye and Mccabe and Mrs. Miller, and hopefully you'll join me, after not being too insulted, for more double takes. This is Solitude Ronin from Solitude Ronin Films, wishing you well and saying farewell.